Andre Whitfield was 44 years old when he pulled into his own driveway with a red bow stretched across the hood of a $140,000 Mercedes G-Wagon, the exact car his wife had pointed at through a dealership window 18 years earlier, back when they had nothing. Camille cried. She kissed him. She said it was the happiest moment of her marriage. Andre believed her completely. The next morning, he decided to surprise her one more time, to watch her drive off in it, to see her face light up again. Instead, he watched her pull out of the driveway, bypass the road to her office entirely, and stop 2 blocks away in front of an apartment building he didn't recognize. A man walked out, got in like he'd done it 100 times before, leaned over, kissed her. Andre sat frozen behind the wheel of his truck, watching the car he'd just paid for drive away with another man inside it. And in that moment, he made a decision that would end everything Camille thought she'd already gotten away with. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The sun hadn't fully come up yet. The sky was that soft gray-purple color it gets just before the light breaks through, and the whole neighborhood was still and quiet. No kids out, no cars moving, just the birds starting up somewhere in the oak tree at the edge of the yard. Andre Whitfield stood in his driveway in his work boots and a worn gray hoodie, arms crossed, looking at the most beautiful thing he'd ever bought. The Mercedes G-Wagon sat there like it had always belonged in front of this house. Black on black. Every inch of it polished to a mirror shine. The red bow on the hood was enormous, almost cartoonish, the kind you see in car commercials. But Andre didn't care how it looked. He'd ordered it 3 days ago, and the dealership had delivered it at 5 in the morning, just like he asked. He pulled out his phone and took a picture. Then another. He wasn't a man who took a lot of pictures. 44 years old, big hands, calloused palms, the kind of man who communicated through results rather than words. He'd built Whitfield & Sons Construction out of nothing. Literally nothing. A truck, a tool belt, and a reputation for showing up on time and doing exactly what he said he'd do. Now, 18 years later, the company had 32 employees, 2 active project sites, and a contract with Morrow County that would keep them busy for the next 2.5 years. It was the biggest deal he'd ever closed. Signed the papers yesterday afternoon. He thought about calling his mother, Odessa, last night. Decided to wait. This morning was for Camille first. He had been 23 years old the first time he saw a G-Wagon up close. He and Camille had been dating for about 4 months, and they were at a Benz dealership on a Saturday afternoon. Not to buy anything, just to look, the way young people with no money do when they want to feel close to something better. They were walking past the showroom window when Camille stopped dead in her tracks. Andre. She pressed one hand flat against the glass. Look at that! It was silver, that one. Boxy and proud, sitting in the showroom like it owned the building. That's a G-Wagon, he said. I know what it is. She was grinning. I want one. One day. I want one of those. He stood beside her and looked at the price sticker. Then he looked at his wallet, which had $48 in it. One day, he said. And he meant it the way you mean something when you've got nothing to back it up except the feeling in your chest that tells you to keep going. She'd laughed and taken his hand, and they'd walked to the McDonald's 2 blocks over and split a large fry. That was 21 years ago. The light in the bedroom came on at 6:40. Andre straightened up, uncrossed his arms, and waited. He heard the shower run, heard the familiar sounds of a house waking up, the water cutting off, a drawer sliding open and shut, the soft footsteps on the hardwood coming toward the back of the house. The side door opened. Camille stepped out onto the small back porch, still in her silk robe, her hair wrapped, a mug of coffee in her hand. She was looking down at her phone and didn't notice the driveway yet. "Andre?" She looked up, confused. "What are you?" Then she saw it. She stopped, completely still. Her coffee mug tilted slightly in her hand, and Andre almost said something about it, but he didn't. He just watched her face. Her eyes went wide. Her mouth opened and closed once, without making a sound. Then she looked at him, then back at the car, and when she looked at him again, her eyes were full of tears. "No," she whispered. "Andre." "Yes," he said. She came down the porch steps fast, and he barely had time to open his arms before she was in them. She grabbed him hard around the neck and held on, and he could feel her shoulders shaking. She was crying for real. Not polite tears. Actual, overwhelmed crying against his shoulder. "This is too much," she said. "This is too much. You didn't have to." "I wanted to." He patted her back. "We said one day. It's one day." She pulled back and looked at him with wet cheeks, and that wide, bright smile he'd loved since he was 23 years old. Then her phone buzzed in her robe pocket. She didn't look at it, didn't reach for it. Just sort of went still for half a second, her smile holding in place, and pressed the side button through the fabric to silence it. Then she looked back at Andre like nothing had happened. He noticed. He filed it away without thinking much of it. Probably her sister. Probably a work email. She was excited. People get distracted when they're excited. The phone buzzed again. She silenced it again. Same smooth motion. Never looked down. "Can I sit in it?" she asked, already moving toward the car. He laughed. "It's yours. You don't have to ask." She walked around the G-Wagon slowly, dragging her fingers along the hood, examining every angle with the focus of someone trying to memorize a thing. Then she looked back at him over her shoulder. "Keys?" He pulled them from his hoodie pocket and held them out. She crossed back to him and took them, and when her fingers closed around the key fob, she let out a short, almost disbelieving laugh. "I can't wait to drive this to work tomorrow morning," she said. She kissed him. Long, warm, her hand on his jaw. She still smelled like her rose soap from the shower. "Thank you," she said against his lips. "I mean that." "I know you do," he said. And she went back inside, glowing. Andre woke up at 5:30 the next morning with a good feeling in his chest. He lay there for a minute, staring at the ceiling, listening to Camille's slow breathing beside him. She was still asleep, hair still wrapped, one hand tucked under her cheek the way she always slept. He thought about yesterday, the red bow, her face when she saw it, the way she'd grabbed him around the neck and held on. He got up quietly, got dressed in the dark, and decided he was going to surprise her again. Nothing big. He'd just park down the block and walk up, catch her face one more time when she climbed into that car, for the first time alone. Maybe bring her a coffee from the shop on Denning. Send her off right. It felt like a good idea. He stopped at the coffee shop, got her order, oat milk latte, 1 sugar, the thing she'd been ordering for 6 years, and pulled onto their street at 7:10. He was a block away when he saw the G-Wagon already backing out of the driveway. He stopped the truck. Camille was dressed for work, hair down and styled, dark blazer. She looked sharp. She pulled out smooth and confident, the way a person drives a car they've already made peace with owning, and then she turned left. Andre frowned. Her office was to the right. She always went right. He sat there for 2 seconds. Then he pulled forward slowly, keeping his distance, just to see where she was going. Maybe she was stopping for gas. Maybe she wanted to take a longer route and enjoy the drive. He told himself that. He followed half a block behind. She didn't go far. 2 blocks over on a quiet street called Mercer, she slowed down and pulled up alongside a low, plain apartment building. 3 stories, beige paint that had gone a little gray from the weather, a small parking lot beside it with a chain-link fence. Andre coasted to a stop at the corner and watched. He left the engine running. For about 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then the front door of the building opened, and a man walked out. He was tall, broad-shouldered, in a dark gray suit that fit him well. Light brown skin, closely cut hair. He was carrying a leather bag over one shoulder, and he walked with the loose, unhurried stride of a man who knew where he was going and wasn't worried about anything. He came straight to the passenger side of the G-Wagon. He didn't knock on the window, didn't wait to be waved in. He just opened the door and got in, easy and familiar, like he'd done it 100 times before. The door closed. Andre watched the car sit there at the curb. Then the man leaned over. It wasn't a long kiss, but it wasn't a friendly one either. There was nothing confusing about what it was. Andre's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He didn't move. He watched them pull away from the curb. Through the back window of the G-Wagon, he could see their heads close together, Camille's shoulders moving the way they do when she laughs. Easy, relaxed, happy. They didn't look back. He sat at the corner of Mercer Street with Camille's coffee in the cup holder, still warm, until the G-Wagon turned right onto Halstead Avenue and disappeared. The drive home took 4 minutes. He didn't turn on the radio, didn't make any calls, didn't say a single word out loud, not even to himself. He just drove and breathed. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Slow and deliberate, the way his high school football coach had taught him to do before a big play, when everything in your body wants to move too fast. Don't react, he told himself. Not yet. He pulled into the driveway and parked in the same spot where the G-Wagon had sat the morning before. He turned the engine off. He sat there with both hands still on the wheel and looked straight ahead at the garage door. The house was quiet. The neighborhood was quiet. A sprinkler was going somewhere down the street. The oak tree was doing its thing in the light breeze. He picked up Camille's coffee from the cup holder, looked at it, set it back down. He thought about the man in the gray suit, the leather bag, the way he'd walked to that car without a single moment of hesitation. No nerves, no looking around. Just a man walking toward something that belonged to him. In her car. His car. He breathed. He had built everything he owned by making smart decisions instead of fast ones. Every job he'd ever won, every contract he'd ever signed, every problem he'd ever solved on a work site, none of it had come from reacting. It had come from thinking. This was no different. He was not going to walk into that house and blow everything apart on the first day. Not before he knew what he was actually dealing with. Not before he had the full picture. He was going to find out everything first, every last thing. Then he would decide what to do. He sat in the driveway, looking at the empty space where the G-Wagon had been, and let that decision settle into him like concrete, going hard. Andre sat in his truck outside the Whitfield & Sons office, engine off, phone in his hand. The building was a simple one-story brick structure on the east side of town. His name was on the sign out front. He'd paid for that sign himself, 11 years ago, with a check he'd written while his hand was shaking. He looked at Terry's contact and pressed call. It rang twice. "What's good?" Terry answered. He had that easy voice, the same one he'd had since they were 22 and splitting a bad apartment on the south side. "Hey," Andre said. "You got a few minutes?" A short pause. Terry had known Andre long enough to hear something in the word hey. "Yeah, what's up?" "I need you to look into something for me." Andre kept his voice even. Personal, not business. Okay. The joint accounts, mine and Camille's, checking, savings, whatever's linked. I want to know if anything looks off, any transfers I might not know about, anything that doesn't look right. Another pause, longer this time. How far back you want me to go? A year, Andre said. Maybe more. Terry didn't ask why. He didn't push. That was one of the things Andre had always respected most about him. The man knew when to ask questions and when to just move. I'll pull it together tonight, Terry said. I'll call you tomorrow morning. Keep it quiet. Always, Terry said. And then, carefully, you good? Andre looked out through the windshield at the sign with his name on it. I'm fine, he said. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Camille got home at 6:15, which was normal. She came through the door with that same glow from the day before, her heels clicking on the hardwood, the G-Wagon keys dangling from 2 fingers. Baby, she said, dropping her bag on the bench by the door. I cannot tell you what it was like driving that car today. Andre was standing in the kitchen, stirring a pot of rice. He turned and smiled. Yeah? The way people were looking at me at the stoplight on Franklin. She laughed. I felt like somebody. She kissed him on the cheek and went to change. Andre turned back to the stove and kept stirring. She talked through dinner. That wasn't unusual. Camille had always been a talker, especially after a good day, and this apparently had been one. She talked about a showing she'd had that afternoon. A young couple looking for something in the Meadowbrook area, first-time buyers, sweet, but indecisive. She talked about the drive back. She mentioned stopping at the dry cleaner on Broad. Andre listened. He nodded in the right places. He said, when it was called for. But for the first time in a long time, he was actually paying attention, not to the words, to the shape of the story. She said the showing had run long, that she hadn't eaten lunch until nearly 3, that she'd been stuck in traffic on the way home. But she'd walked in the door at 6:15. She always walked in the door at 6:15 on a normal day from a normal route. If the showing had run long and traffic had been bad, and she'd stopped at the dry cleaner, the timing didn't quite add up. Not in a dramatic way, not in a way you'd catch if you weren't listening hard. But Andre was listening hard now. He didn't say anything about it. He just filed it away. Camille fell asleep before 10. She was out quickly, the way she usually was, and within 20 minutes her breathing had gone slow and steady. Andre lay beside her for another half hour. Then he got up. He went to the small office off the hallway, the one they'd set up as a home office years ago that mostly collected mail and paperwork neither of them wanted to deal with. He closed the door behind him and turned on the desk lamp. He wasn't sure what he was looking for. That was the honest truth. He just knew he had to start somewhere. And somewhere meant the paper trail right in front of him. He started with the stack of unopened mail on the corner of the desk. Most of it was nothing. A credit card offer, a car insurance renewal, a donation request from the church they hadn't been to in 8 months. Then he moved to the accordion folder where they kept tax documents. Camille managed this stuff, had for years. He'd always been fine with that. She was the one with the real estate background. She understood paperwork better than he did. He trusted her. He was only just now understanding what that trust had cost him. He flipped through the folder section by section. Old tax returns, utility receipts, a folder labeled mortgage with documents going back to when they'd refinanced 5 years ago. Near the back, behind a divider marked in Camille's handwriting, taxes, Miss Key, he found an envelope. Inside was a single bank statement. The account name at the top read C. Whitfield, not joint, just her name. He looked at the routing number, the account number. He'd never seen either one before. The statement showed 12 months of activity, regular deposits, Regular transfers out. He folded it once and set it on top of the desk. He'd show Terry in the morning. Andre got to the office at 7:15. Terry was already there. That wasn't unusual. Terry was almost always there first. Coffee going, blinds cracked, the financial spreadsheets for Whitfield & Sons already open on his second monitor. He looked up when Andre came through the door. Andre didn't say good morning. He just walked to the desk and set the bank statement down in front of Terry, flat, facing him. Terry picked it up, read it. His eyes moved slowly across the page the way they always did when he was processing something. "C. Whitfield," he said quietly. "Not joint," Andre said. "Her name only." Terry set the statement back down. He looked at the account number in the header for a long moment. "Let me run this," he said. Andre pulled a chair to the side of the desk and sat down. Terry typed. The room was quiet except for the hum of the computer and the sound of the coffee maker finishing its cycle in the small break room down the hall. 3 minutes passed, maybe 4. Then Terry leaned back in his chair, slowly, and put both hands flat on the desk. "Andre." "What?" "This account is tied to a HELOC." Terry turned the monitor so Andre could see it. "A home equity line of credit, opened 14 months ago against your property on Clement Drive." Andre looked at the screen. The address was his home, his and Camille's home, the house he'd bought outright at 40. No small thing, a fact he'd been privately proud of every day since. "I didn't sign any HELOC," Andre said. "I know." Terry's voice was steady, but careful. "Your name is on the application, but I want you to look at something." He pulled up a scanned copy of the original loan document. He zoomed in on the signature line. Andre stared at it. His name. His signature. Or something meant to look like it. He'd signed his name 10,000 times on 10,000 contracts. He knew exactly what it looked like. The slope of the A, the way the W connected to the H. This was close. But it wasn't him. He didn't say anything for a moment. "How much?" he finally asked. "The line was opened for 80,000, Terry said. 63 of it has been drawn." Andre nodded once. He kept his face still. "Give me a few days," Terry said. "I want to cross-reference the withdrawals against property records. Something about the transfer pattern looks like it's going somewhere specific." "Do it," Andre said. He stood up, poured himself a coffee, went to his own office and got to work. 3 days later, Terry walked into Andre's office and closed the door. He sat down across from the desk and opened a folder. Inside were printed pages, property records, transaction histories, a Louisiana LLC registration that had been dissolved 8 months prior. He laid them out, one by one. "Her name and Preston Boyle's name are both on 3 property transactions in the last 2 years, Terry said. 2 flips in the Eastwick corridor and 1 commercial conversion off Route 9 that never got off the ground. Andre looked at the pages. "All 3 lost money?" he asked. "The first one broke even. The second one lost about 18,000. The third—" Terry tapped the Route 9 record. "Lost somewhere north of 30. $48,000. Gone. Out of a line of credit Andre had never agreed to open, secured against the house he'd worked 18 years to own free and clear." Andre leaned back in his chair. He thought about Camille at the dinner table, talking about stoplight traffic and dry cleaning and first-time buyers who couldn't make up their minds. Her voice light and easy, her eyes warm. He thought about Preston getting into the G-Wagon like he'd done it 100 times. "They're business partners," Andre said. It wasn't a question. "Have been for at least 2 years, Terry said. "Maybe longer. The affair and the money, they're not 2 separate things, Andre. They're the same thing." The room was quiet, Andre looked down at the papers spread across his desk. The forged signature, the failed properties, the LLC they'd tried to bury. $63,000 drained from his home's equity while he was out bidding jobs and managing crews and trusting that the person beside him in bed was the person she said she was. He gathered the papers carefully, stacked them, slid them into the folder. "Keep pulling," he said. "Everything you can find. Copies of all of it." Terry nodded and stood. He paused at the door. "You holding up?" Andre opened his desk drawer, set the folder inside, and closed it. "I'm good," he said. Terry left. That evening, Andre sat alone at his desk after the last crew member had gone home. The office was quiet. The light outside had gone gray and flat. He opened the drawer and took out the folder. It was nearly 3 inches thick now. Statements, property records, transaction histories, the forged loan document. 3 inches of what his marriage had actually been. He stared at it for a long time. Then he thought about the dates. The first HELOC draw was 14 months ago, but the LLC with Preston's name had been registered 2 years back, which meant this started before the paperwork, before the money. He needed to know exactly when. The drive to his mother's house took 22 minutes. Andre knew every turn. He'd driven this route his whole life. The 2-lane road past the old grain co-op, the left onto Birchwood, the way the pavement narrowed just before the driveway. He could do it half asleep. Tonight, he barely saw any of it. He parked in front of the small yellow house and sat in the truck for a moment. The porch light was already on. It was always on when she knew he was coming. Odessa Whitfield was 68 years old and had never once in Andre's memory wasted a word. She was standing at the stove when he came through the back door, stirring something in the big cast-iron pot she'd owned longer than he'd been alive. The kitchen smelled like onions and bay leaf, and the faint sweetness of cornbread going golden in the oven. "Right on time," she said, without turning around. Andre hung his jacket on the hook by the door. The same hook. The one he'd used since he was 9. He sat down at the kitchen table. They ate the way they always did on Sundays. A full plate, no television, no phones out. His mother talked about her neighbor's new dog, about the gutters that needed cleaning before the rain came, about the church bazaar she'd helped organize. Andre listened and ate and answered when she asked him something. It was normal, comfortable, the way Sunday dinner had always been. It wasn't until she set a slice of sweet potato pie down in front of him and lowered herself into the chair across the table that the conversation shifted. She looked at him the way only a mother can, like she was reading something written behind his eyes. "How's Camille?" she said. She always asked, routine. But the way she said it tonight, her voice careful, her eyes still steady on his face, Andre understood she was asking something more than just, "How is she?" He took a slow breath. "I don't know," he said. Odessa set her fork down. "What does that mean?" she said. "It means I've been learning some things," Andre said. "About her, about how she's been spending her time." His mother didn't react the way some people would. She didn't gasp or lean forward, or start asking questions all at once. She just sat back in her chair, slightly, and looked at him with the quiet expression of someone who had been waiting a long time for a door to open. "There's a man named Preston Boyle," Andre said. "He works in real estate. They've been together." Odessa didn't say anything for a moment. Then she said, "Preston." Just the name. The way she said it made Andre go still. "You know that name," he said. She folded her hands on the table. Her jaw shifted once, the way it did when she was choosing her words. "About 18 months ago," she said. "I was at Leonetti's." the Italian place off Merchant Street. I was there with Louise from church. She paused. Camille was there. She was sitting in the back, near the window, with a man. Andre waited. They were laughing, his mother said. Leaning in close. She didn't see me. I didn't go over. She looked at her hands. I told myself it was work. A client, a colleague. I told myself it wasn't my business. Her voice stayed level, but Andre caught the weight under it. The quiet guilt of someone who had stayed silent, and was only now understanding what that silence had cost. It wasn't work, Andre said. No, she said softly. I can see that now. The kitchen was quiet. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a car passed slowly on Birchwood. Andre did the math without meaning to. 18 months. The LLC had been registered at 2 years. The HELOC drawn on 14 months ago. And Odessa had seen them before any of that paperwork existed, before the money moved, before the failed properties, before any of it became something he could hold in a folder. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a stumble or a moment of weakness that grew into something more. This had been a choice, made over and over again, for years. He kept his face still. I should have told you, his mother said. You didn't know what it was, he said. I wouldn't have wanted you to. She looked at him for a long moment. What are you going to do? She said. I'm still deciding, Andre said, but I won't do anything foolish. She held his eyes. Then she nodded, once, the slow nod of a woman who trusted her son and was choosing to show it. She picked up her fork and cut into her pie. Andre did the same. He left just after 9. She walked him to the door, held his arm for a moment before he went down the porch steps. She didn't say anything else. She didn't have to. He drove the first 10 minutes home in silence. Then he picked up his phone from the passenger seat and called Terry. Terry answered on the second ring. I need to move to the next step, Andre said. It's time to set a trap. Andre picked a Tuesday night. Nothing special about a Tuesday. That was the point. He didn't want Camille on guard. He wanted her relaxed, comfortable, thinking the evening was just another quiet dinner between two people who had been married long enough to eat without talking much. He cooked. Grilled chicken, roasted potatoes, a salad from the bag because he didn't feel like chopping. He set the table properly, the way she liked it. Placemats, not just plates, dropped down. He even lit the candle she kept on the center of the table, the tall cream-colored one she'd bought at some boutique store and never let him use for nothing. She walked in at 6:15, keys in hand, smelling like her office perfume. She looked at the table and smiled. Look at you, she said. Sit down, Andre said. Food's hot. They ate. She talked about a listing that was taking too long to move. He listened and nodded and passed her the salt when she reached for it. Then, halfway through his plate, he set his fork down and leaned back a little. I got some news today, he said, about the Meridian contract. She looked up. The city's adding a second phase, he said. Twice the scope, twice the money. Her eyes lit up. Not the warm kind of lit, the calculating kind, quick and bright, like something clicking into place behind them. She covered it fast with a wide smile, but Andre had been watching her face for weeks now with a different kind of attention. He didn't miss it. Baby, that's incredible, she said. That's huge. Yeah, he said. Thing is, to take it on at that scale, I'd need more working capital up front. Equipment, crew expansion, materials. He paused. I've been thinking about refinancing the house, pull equity, reinvest it into the business. Camille reached across the table and put her hand over his. Whatever you need, she said. This is your moment. We should do whatever it takes. Her hand was warm. Her voice was steady. She looked like a woman who loved her husband and believed in him completely. Andre turned his hand over and squeezed hers once. "I just want to make sure I do it right," he said. "Financially." "Of course," she said. "We should talk to someone. A real financial advisor, not just your accountant. Someone who understands real estate and business financing together." She said it gently, helpfully, like the thought had just come to her naturally. "You know anybody?" he said. "Actually," she said, "I might." She sent him the name the next morning. A text right after 8. "Talked to a contact last night. His name is Daniel Fitch. He does financial consulting, real estate-backed lending. I think he could really help, babe. Want me to set something up?" Andre screenshot it and sent it to Terry before he even got out of bed. Terry called him 40 minutes later. "Daniel Fitch," Terry said, "licensed financial consultant. His main clients are property developers." A pause. "He co-signed on 2 of Preston Boyle's LLC formations in the last 3 years. They've done at least 4 deals together." Andre stared at the ceiling. "She sent it the morning after I mentioned refinancing," Andre said. "I know," Terry said. "That's not coincidence." "No," Terry said. "That's a plan." Andre hung up and lay there another minute. Then he got up and got dressed for work. Odessa held her family gatherings the way she held everything else, without fanfare and without compromise. There was food, there was a table big enough to fit everyone, and there were no acceptable excuses for being late. The following Saturday, the house on Birchwood filled up the way it always did. Cousins and neighbors and a few people from the church mixed together in the living room and spilled out onto the back porch. Camille was there, easy and social, working the room the way she always did at family functions. Laughing with the cousins, helping Odessa carry things from the kitchen, touching Andre's arm when she passed him. Sabrina Ortiz arrived around 2. Camille's best friend since college. Small woman, bright eyes, the kind of person who filled every silence without meaning to. She found Andre near the food table and hugged him the way she always did. They made small talk for a few minutes. The gathering, the food, the weather turning. Then Sabrina said, almost as a side note, "I told Camille she should let me help her pack, when the time comes. Moving is so stressful." Andre kept his face easy. "Pack?" "Oh, Sabrina waved her hand lightly. "She's just been talking about starting fresh. Charlotte, maybe. She makes it sound so exciting." She smiled and reached past him for a napkin. "You two are going to love it down there." She drifted away toward the other end of the table. Andre stood where he was. He didn't move for a moment. He just reached for his cup and took a slow drink and looked out the window at the backyard, where 3 of his younger cousins were laughing about something in the grass. Charlotte, when the house sells, starting fresh. That night, he called Terry from the driveway before he even went inside. "We have everything we need," Andre said. "It's time to talk to a lawyer." The lawyer's name was Gerald Webb. His office was on the 4th floor of a building downtown, quiet and plain, the kind of place where serious things got handled without decoration. No framed motivational posters, no fake plants, just dark wood furniture, stacked files, and a window that looked out over the parking garage next door. Andre and Terry sat across from him at a wide desk, the folder open between them. 3 inches thick, just like the night Andre had first stacked it. Gerald Webb was 61, slow-moving, and had a voice like gravel settling. He didn't rush. He picked up each document, read it fully, set it down, picked up the next one. Andre sat still and let him work. 20 minutes passed before Webb spoke. "The HELOC," he said, setting down the bank statement. "This was opened 14 months ago." That's right, Terry said. Mr. Whitfield, did you sign anything related to a home equity line of credit in the last 2 years? No, Andre said. Webb nodded slowly. He held up one page, turning it slightly toward the light. This signature line. He set it back down. That's not sufficient to have authorized this, and the pattern of draws against it matches property transaction records that your name doesn't appear on anywhere. He folded his hands. This is fraud, not arguable fraud, clear, documentable fraud. The word sat in the room. Andre had known it. He'd said it to himself privately, but hearing a lawyer say it plainly, without hesitation, made it land differently. What does that mean for me? Andre said. It means several things. Webb leaned back. First, your business assets, Whitfield and Sons, its equipment, contracts, accounts, all of it registered solely in your business name. That's separate property. She cannot touch it in a divorce proceeding. Terry's already confirmed nothing business-related was used as collateral here. That holds. Terry gave a short nod. Second, Webb continued, the HELOC draws can be traced and quantified. We know exactly what was taken and when. That becomes a financial misconduct claim inside the divorce, which dramatically affects how the marital assets get divided. A judge will not look kindly on this. He paused. Third, and separately, the loan documentation itself could be referred to the district attorney's office. That's a criminal matter, not a civil one. I'm not saying that has to happen. I'm saying it's available to you. Andre looked at the folder. He thought about the Tuesday dinner, her hand warm over his. Whatever you need, this is your moment. I don't want to decide on the criminal piece yet, Andre said. I want the divorce handled first, clean and fast, with everything on record. That's a reasonable position, Webb said, and the stronger your documented case, the more cooperative the other side tends to become. He almost smiled when he said it. Andre spent the next 4 days moving carefully. He didn't rush. Rushing made noise, and noise was the one thing he couldn't afford right now. Terry helped him shift the business accounts to a new banking structure that put them cleanly beyond any joint claim. They updated the business insurance, the contract holding entity, and the equipment registrations. Each step quiet, each step logged. Webb's paralegal handled the paperwork and sent him confirmation receipts he stored in a separate email account Camille had never seen. Every evening he came home. He ate dinner with Camille. He asked about her listings. He watched her pour herself a glass of wine and sit on the couch with her legs folded under her, scrolling her phone. She laughed at something once and showed him a video, and he watched it and laughed back because it was actually funny. And for one strange second, the room felt exactly like it used to. Then the second passed. He slept on his side of the bed. He kept his breathing even. He let her reach over in the morning and squeeze his hand before she got up. He did not flinch. On Thursday evening, he called her from his truck outside the hardware store. I want to do a dinner, he said. Something small. Celebrate the Meridian expansion for real. Not just us talking about it over grilled chicken. I love that, Camille said. He could hear her smiling. Who were you thinking? Just Terry and Odessa, he said. People who actually know what the work cost. Keep it close. That's perfect, baby. Her voice was warm, easy. Should I handle the food or are you cooking? I'll handle it, he said. You just be there. Obviously. She laughed softly. When? Saturday night, he said. 7 o'clock. Done, she said. I'll wear something nice. Good, he said. He said he loved her and ended the call. He sat with the phone in his hand for a moment, looking at the windshield. He thought about the G-Wagon, the red bow. Her face when she'd cried in the driveway, and how real those tears had looked. He had believed every single one of them. He put the phone in his pocket and went into the hardware store. He had a list. He worked through it. That was how it was going to go now, one item at a time, in order, until everything was done. The table looked good. Andre had set it himself that afternoon. White cloth, real plates, not the everyday ones, candles in the center, already lit by the time Odessa arrived at 6:30. He'd made her pot roast, her recipe, the one she'd written out on an index card 20 years ago, and he'd kept folded in the kitchen drawer ever since. Odessa walked in, looked at the table, looked at Andre, and didn't say a word. She just squeezed his arm and sat down. Terry came 10 minutes later. He glanced at the folder sitting beside Andre's place setting, then pulled out his chair and sat. He'd seen every page in that folder already. He poured himself a glass of water and waited. The three of them were quiet together. Not uncomfortable. Just still. Camille came through the door at 6:58. She was dressed well. A deep burgundy wrap dress, heels that clicked on the entryway tile, hair pinned up the way she wore it when she wanted to look effortless, but had planned it for an hour. She smelled like the perfume Andre had given her 2 Christmases ago. "It smells amazing in here," she said, setting her purse on the side table. She scanned the room, smiled at Odessa, nodded at Terry. "You all started without me?" "Just sitting?" Odessa said. Camille rounded the table, bent down and kissed Andre on the cheek, and took her seat across from him. She unfolded her napkin and laid it across her lap. "Baby, this looks beautiful. You did all this?" "I did," Andre said. He served the food. He poured the wine. He let the table breathe for a few minutes, everyone eating, the conversation easy and light the way it always was in that house on good nights. Camille talked about a listing she'd toured that morning. Odessa asked Terry about his daughter's soccer league. Andre ate slowly and listened to all of it. Then he set down his fork. "I want to thank everyone for coming," he said. His voice was calm, level, the same voice he used in contract meetings when the number on the table was non-negotiable. "I said this was about celebrating the Meridian expansion. That's not the whole reason." The table shifted, not visibly, something underneath it. Camille smiled. "Andre, what are you—" "I'm going to finish," he said. Not harsh, just certain. He opened the folder. 14 months ago, a home equity line of credit was opened against this house. He slid the bank statement across the table toward her. "My signature on the authorization form isn't mine. Terry confirmed it. Our lawyer confirmed it." Camille looked at the paper. Her expression didn't collapse. She was too practiced for that. But something behind her eyes flickered, fast, like a light that almost went out. The draws from that account funded 4 property flips. He laid each transaction summary down in a row, one after another, slow and deliberate. 3 of them failed. Combined losses of over $60,000. All of it tied to a Preston Boyle, who I watched get into the car I bought you the morning after I gave you the keys. The room was absolutely still. Odessa sat with her hands folded in her lap. Terry looked at the table. Camille opened her mouth. "I'm not finished," Andre said. She closed it. 2 weeks ago I told you I was thinking about refinancing to reinvest in the business. Within 3 days, you pointed me toward a financial advisor, who Terry confirmed works directly with Preston. He set that document down too. And at my mother's house, Sabrina told me, without knowing what she was telling me, that you've been talking about when the house sells and starting fresh in Charlotte. He folded his hands on top of the folder. You've been planning to sell this house to cover losses you ran up with him on my credit. Move to Charlotte. Start over. He said it plainly. No drama in it. Just the shape of the thing, laid out clean. I've known for weeks. I didn't say anything because I wanted to know everything before I did. Camille's composure finally cracked. Not loud. It was quiet, actually. The way a wall doesn't fall all at once, but just starts to lean. Her jaw tightened. Her hands came up off the table and then didn't know where to go. Andre. Her voice was different now, thinner. You don't understand the whole... I spoke to Gerald Webb, he said. The business accounts are protected. The equipment, the contracts, the holding entity, all of it secured and beyond the reach of any joint claim. The HELOC fraud is documented and will be part of the divorce filing. Divorce, she said. Like the word surprised her, even though it shouldn't have. Odessa didn't move. Terry didn't move. Camille looked at Andre for a long moment. The candlelight caught the side of her face, and for 1 second she looked exactly like the woman he'd handed keys to in the driveway, eyes wet, smiling like she meant it. Then she straightened. So what is it you want from me, Andre? What exactly do you want? Andre looked at her steadily. I want a divorce, he said. Effective immediately. Camille called him 3 times the morning after the dinner. He didn't answer. She showed up at his office on Tuesday. He let her in because he'd known she would come, and he'd already decided how it would go. She sat across from his desk in the same chair vendors used when they came to negotiate. She'd worn the gray blazer he always said looked good on her. Her voice was steady when she started, but her hands weren't. You want to act like this is all my fault, she said. But you weren't there, Andre. You were never there. You were always at a job site, always at some meeting, always building something that had nothing to do with us. Andre leaned back in his chair. He let her finish. I grew, she said. My career grew. I was handling real deals, real money, real clients. And you were still pouring concrete and acting like that was enough for me. Her chin lifted a little. You never once asked what I needed, not once. He looked at her for a moment after she stopped. You done? He said. She blinked. The joint accounts were frozen Thursday morning, he said. Gerald filed the motion Wednesday night. Anything you're thinking about moving, it's already too late. He opened his desk drawer, pulled out a single sheet of paper, and slid it across to her. The HELOC is documented as fraud. Forged signature, unauthorized draw, the whole chain. Gerald says if we go criminal with it, you're looking at bank fraud charges. That's federal. Camille stared at the paper. But I'm not interested in putting you in a cell, he said. I'm interested in being done, clean, fast. You cooperate with the divorce proceedings, you don't contest the asset division, and Gerald keeps the fraud documentation civil instead of criminal. He folded his hands on the desk. That's the offer. It's the only one. She looked up at him. Her eyes were sharp, searching his face for something to grab onto. A crack, a hesitation, some trace of the man who cried at their wedding and still kept her recipe cards. There was nothing there to find. You would really do that to me, she said quietly, after 18 years. You did it first, he said, and you did it for 14 months. She picked up the paper. She didn't say anything else. Family court smelled like recycled air and old carpet. Judge Faye Wentworth entered the courtroom without ceremony, set her files down, and put on her glasses. She was a compact woman, late 50s, with close-cut silver hair and the kind of stillness that made people sit up straight without being told. She didn't look up from the documents when she spoke. We're here in the matter of Whitfield versus Whitfield. She flipped a page. I've reviewed the financial disclosures, the loan documentation, and the forensic accounting summary submitted by the petitioner's counsel. Camille sat at the respondent's table in a navy suit. Preston was in the gallery behind her, one row back, his arms crossed, dressed like he'd come from somewhere more important. Gerald Webb presented the HELOC documentation first. The forged signature, the unauthorized draws, the 4 property flips connected to Preston's brokerage, 3 of which had gone into default within 18 months. He walked Judge Wentworth through the transaction records in order, clean and methodical. Camille's attorney pushed back, argued the signature discrepancy was administrative error, argued Camille had a right to access marital equity for legitimate investment purposes. Judge Wentworth looked up from the page for the first time. "Counsel," she said, "the petitioner's forensic accountant has identified a signature deviation consistent across 3 documents. The respondent's name does not appear on the original HELOC application as co-borrower, and the draws in question were routed to an account held solely in the respondent's name." She set the page down. "Which of those facts are you disputing?" Camille's attorney paused. "That's what I thought," the judge said, and turned the page. Preston's financial records came in next. Gerald had subpoenaed them, and what they showed wasn't pretty. 7 failed flips over 4 years before Camille was ever in the picture. 2 liens against his brokerage. A personal credit profile that had been declining steadily since the year they met. He hadn't brought Camille into his business because she was talented, though she was. He'd brought her in because she came with a husband who had clean credit, a paid-down home, and no reason to look twice at paperwork his wife handled. The courtroom was quiet while that sank in. Camille sat very still at her table. Andre watched her from across the room as she absorbed what was on the record now. Not just what she'd done, but why Preston had let her do it. Judge Wentworth ruled at 2:15. Camille lost her claim to the marital home. She was ordered to repay the HELOC balance out of her share of the remaining marital assets, which left her with almost nothing. The court forwarded the loan documentation to the State Real Estate Licensing Board for formal review. Andre looked straight ahead as the ruling was read aloud. In his peripheral vision, he caught movement from the gallery. Preston stood up quietly, straightened his jacket, and walked toward the courtroom door without looking at Camille once. The driveway was stamped concrete. Andre had poured it himself on a Saturday in October, with Terry handing him tools and Odessa sitting in a lawn chair offering opinions nobody asked for. It was the first thing he'd built on the new property with his own hands, and it had taken most of the day, and he hadn't wanted it any other way. The house behind him was modest. 3 bedrooms, a deep front porch, a backyard that backed up to a tree line. He'd paid for it outright. No mortgage, no liens, no shared anything. The deed had one name on it. His. He crouched beside the G-Wagon now, a chamois cloth in one hand, working slow circles along the driver's side door. The paint had been resprayed 6 weeks ago, a deep obsidian black that caught the morning light and held it. New tires, new interior. Every detail gone over until there was nothing left of what it used to mean. He'd thought about selling it, back when the divorce was still fresh. It would have been the easier thing to do. Drive it to a lot, sign the paper, walk away clean, but he'd sat with the thought for a few weeks and decided no. Not because he wanted to hold on to anything, because letting it go would have meant it still had some kind of power over him. It didn't. Whitfield & Sons had won 3 major contracts in the past year, 2 commercial builds and a public infrastructure project that had Terry working 12-hour days and complaining about it every chance he got. They'd brought on 4 new crew leads and were in talks with a project manager out of Atlanta who came with 20 years of experience and a reputation that preceded him. Andre had sat across from that manager last week in a conference room with fresh paint on the walls and new chairs he'd picked out himself, and he'd thought, briefly, about the version of his life where he'd never looked twice at that bank statement in the folder marked Taxes, where he'd stayed comfortable, where he'd never found out. He didn't stay on the thought long. Some doors close you out, some doors close you in. The difference is whether you're the one who shuts them. Odessa came by most Sunday mornings now. She lived 12 minutes away, in a small house Andre had helped her find after she mentioned, just once, that she'd been thinking about being closer. She never brought Camille up unprompted. But when the subject arose, she didn't hold herself back any more either. "I'm just saying," she'd told him last week, standing at his kitchen counter eating a biscuit she'd brought from home. "I knew that girl was sideways from the jump. I kept my mouth shut because you were happy and I respected that. But I knew." "I know you knew," Andre had said. "I knew," she said again, for emphasis, because once wasn't always enough for Odessa. He'd laughed. It was a real laugh, not the kind he'd performed in the months after the dinner. The kind that came up from somewhere easy and didn't cost him anything. He was finishing the rear panel of the G-Wagon when he heard someone call his name from the sidewalk. He stood and turned. Marcus Webb, no relation to his lawyer, a man he and Camille had known from the neighborhood association years back. Marcus raised a hand, and Andre gave him a nod. "Didn't know you moved over this way," Marcus said, walking up the driveway. "About 8 months ago," Andre said. Marcus looked at the G-Wagon and nodded appreciatively. "She's clean." "Getting there." They talked briefly, easy talk about the neighborhood, the weather, the way construction costs had gone up. Then Marcus shifted, the way people do when they've been holding something and can't quite keep holding it. "Hey," he said, slower now, "I don't know if you want to hear this, but I ran into somebody who knows Camille. Said she's been having a rough go of it since everything went down. License is still under review, so she can't close deals independently. Working for somebody else's brokerage now. Lot of hours. Not much coming back." He paused. "And that guy she was with? Preston. Nobody's seen them together since the ruling." Andre looked at him evenly. "I appreciate you saying something," he said, and he meant it. He wasn't being polite. He just didn't have anything more than that. No satisfaction rose up in him, no quiet smile, no warmth of "told you so." What he felt was closer to stillness, like a noise he'd been hearing for a long time had finally stopped, and now he could hear the silence where it used to be. Marcus left a few minutes later, and Andre turned back to the G-Wagon. He finished the rear panel, then the tailgate, then the passenger side, where a small scratch near the handle had needed extra work. He went over it twice until the surface was even and smooth under his fingers. He stood back and looked at it. Black paint, clean lines, his reflection in the door, looking back at him. He folded the chamois cloth, set it on the workbench inside the garage, and reached up for the door handle. He pulled the garage door down. The latch clicked shut. He got into his truck, backed out of the driveway, and drove. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.